Welcome to a new episode in the Multiverse video series. Today we're going to learn how to discover and share datasets using the new pins package. So to get started, let's take a look at how we import datasets into R today. And if we take a look at a couple websites that, are pretty arbitrary, they just happen to be websites that I tend to be working on. We can take a look at, for instance, this project called MLflow. And if we look at the R code in the tutorial, you're going to see that a lot of times you will find this pattern where we have some code, right? And, the code is just there. And in this case, the code is loading a CSV file, but it's not clear where this CSV file is from, right? And this is a pretty common pattern that we find all over the web whenever we're analyzing datasets. The code and the data, it's not in the same place necessarily. And even worse, we usually don't have instructions on how to download those datasets. So here's another example. And if we look at this package, the R2D3 package, and if you look at the gallery, we have another instance of a CSV file that is, decoupled from the actual code. So ideally, I should be able to copy paste this code into R and execute it and run. But a lot of times the datasets are on a separate place that where your code is, and it's not exactly trivial to figure out where to download it from. In this case, there is a reference to a GitHub repo, and the GitHub repo does contain the CSV file. However, this is not ideal. Last but not least, we can take a look at the readr package. And the readr package solved this problem in a slightly different way, which is it introduces a helper function in this case called readr example. And what readr example does, it basically downloads the file. Well, it doesn't even need to download it, but references the file that you're giving it. So this solves the problem for the readr package, which is really nice because you can just copy paste this code and make it work. But it's not ideal because basically, we would have to introduce this function on each of the packages, which can be pretty tricky. So the question here is there a better way to import datasets into R? So suppose that, for instance, we have this particular dataset, the flares.csv, and I'm just going to get the raw code, right? So this is the file. So is there a better way to create R code that retrieves datasets without having to rely on manual steps? And this is where the pins package comes to. If you want to learn about the pins package, you should go to RStudio github.io/pins. And, there's a lot of resources to explain you how to install, how to use it, and why not. So I'm going to go a little bit fast on this video. But the idea here is the first step, what you want to do is you want to install the pins package. So you can do that with install.packages and then pins. And then you want to say library pins. That's pretty much it. And what you want to do whenever you're reading datasets, one of the operations you can do is you can just point pins to a URL. And what it's going to happen when we pin this dataset, the pins package is going to retrieve it and it's going to cache it for us. So in this case, we could replace a lot of the code that we've seen in different packages by saying, hey, simply use the pins package, and the pins package would download that for you automatically. Not even that, but what the pin package does, it's also to cache this for you. So whenever you run this again, it's actually really, really fast, and it's really, really fast. Mostly because it's checking headers and making sure that we don't re-download the datasets twice, or why not. So again, very, very simple functionality. If you want to download datasets from the web, you can use the pins package just with the pin verb to get those datasets. Now, the pins package does so much more than just caching remote datasets. It also allows you to discover and share datasets. So what does that mean? Well, you should take a look at the use cases. Actually, not the use cases, but the understanding boards section on the documentation. And here you can see that you can basically share datasets in GitHub, Kaggle, and RStudio Connect. And you can also get them from a bunch of other different places. In this particular video, we're going to explore how to use pins with Kaggle datasets. So what you want to do with pins is create a new connection, and you want to select Kaggle. And what you would want to specify here before you start using Kaggle datasets is a pointer to your credentials file. And you can get that credentials file very easily by clicking create new token, which would download a JSON file. And then you can just basically connect with that, which I've already done in the past. All right, so in this case, we're already connected to Kaggle. And as you can see, I already published some datasets. But the thing that is really interesting is that with pins, you can search, meaning discover different datasets using an add-in. So you can launch the pins add-in, which basically can search across multiple boards, which is how we call the backends that allows you to store and share information. So for instance, one of the boards that you can use is you can search all CRAN datasets for, datasets that might be interesting to you. For instance, there's a dataset about Seattle sales, which is Seattle house prices that you can pretty much download pretty easily by using the pins package. But what we're going to do today is something a little bit more interesting. We are going to use the Kaggle board to find a Game of Thrones dataset and do something interesting with it. So, so here I'm searching for Game of Thrones, and we can see that there's multiple datasets that are related with Game of Thrones. And I'm going to download this one called David from the user David Kyle, which is called Game of Thrones subtitles, and do some data analysis with this. So as you can see, what pins is returning in this case is just a path, and this path happens to be a CSV file. That's pretty much it. So what we would want to do here is, first of all, read that CSV file. And actually, maybe what I should do is create an R notebook. And let's just delete all of these. And we're going to start by including the tidyverse. And we're going to also include, pins. And since later on we're going to be using ggplot, let's also set the theme, mostly because I like the minimalist theme. So let's just do theme minimal. Again, this unrelated, but we'll do it now. All right, so what I was mentioning is that we can use pins to retrieve datasets. We already discovered it, we found it. And now we can use readr to basically just load this dataset, which comes from Kaggle, right? So let's just run this, and as you can see here, what we're loading is a dataset that contains basically all the dialogs from the Game of Thrones series. So it comes with multiple columns. It comes with a lot of columns actually. Like it's basically all the dialogues and from all the episodes. So as you can see, this is not very tidy. It's not what we would consider a tidy data set. So the first step, what we need to do is we should clean this up. So we should create a column called dialogs, joining all these columns. And let's just see how many. Yeah, it has a lot of columns, so we can just run something really quick here. Oh, I didn't mean that. But that works. Really? It has that many columns? According to this particular dataset, it has 776. which is a lot. Okay, so we're gonna pick all the columns, and yeah, I'll just remove the last one because I'm pretty sure it's empty. And then, okay, so we're joining them all, and then what we want to do is we also want to clean the episodes. So if you remember from the first time I ran this, the very first column has these weird, it's mostly an identifier. So we can also clean that up quite easily if we do episode equals, and then let's just clean up the regular expression. I mean, using a regular expression, we're gonna clean this up. Yeah, so if we do this, it should clean up basically the episode. It's just gonna be the episode ID, I think. Let's just run it. And yeah, once we have that, maybe it didn't. Episode, yeah, I want to make sure that's our. Oh, okay, yeah. So it might be here the column, but the problem is, yeah, I changed the name of the column to lowercase. Okay, it's fine. And let's just get the second half of the title also by cleaning this up, which the ID starts with letter S and then a number, right? And then it's number E for episode and then a number. And that's pretty much it. But then we also want to remove that .srt thing from the end. I don't know what that means, but we'll remove it in this episode. Actually, maybe we should do transmute. If we do transmute, we would actually only end up with the columns that we want. And then let's just rename the last column all in lowercase, and hopefully we got this right. Let's see. Oh, actually I'm naming this one underscore. Yeah, that's fine. I already renamed it. So, but we still need to include it. Yeah, so we still need to include that last column, right? So hopefully that gives us a pretty clean data set. Yeah, so the title is still not great. We want to remove S here to 1. Oh, it's not R, it's E. All right, let's try it again. But it's looking so much better. We basically have the episode, the title, yep, the title, and then we have the entire dialogue, which is the dialogue from the entire episode of Game of Thrones. Right, so we have these things, which is pretty great. And, you know, the problem here is that, you know, we all hit kind of like these. Actually, let me just name it. Let's just call it dialogues. We all hit, you know, cases where we need to clean up the data, like this one. And then, you know, like the really sad thing is that basically everyone needs to redo this data cleanup over and over again, right? So what we can do instead is we can actually share this data set with others, right? And if I'm doing some data analysis, I don't want this to be wasted, right? What I want to do is actually to share it with others. So we're gonna say register. Oh, do I already run pins? Okay, and then I'm gonna say register board register. And basically what I want to do is I want to share this with others, this particular data set that I already cleaned. And you can also do that with pins. So the way that this would work is, for instance, in this case, we want to use GitHub. So we're gonna say that we want to use GitHub. And you know, as you can see here, my username is it's this particular username. And yeah, I have, and the name of the repo is called datasets. That's it. So let's run this, which should register the board. And then what we can do is, we already have the Game of Thrones dialogues. We can share this with others. And we can share this by using pin. So basically pin the dialogues, and then we can give it a name. Actually, I like already the Game of Thrones dialogue, but we can give it a description. Game of Thrones dialogues. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And we need to specify also the board. So we're gonna say board equals GitHub. That should be it. And yeah, so let's give it a let's do it this way. You can use the pipe, but then you need to specify a name, which it's fine. But I actually like the name Game of Thrones Dialogs. All right, so basically what this is doing is sharing this particular data set on my GitHub account, which this particular repo happens to be public, but you can also use it on private repos. So if I were to refresh this, you can see that I have a data set which has a CSV file and also an R file and a description file. All right, so this is great because now anyone else watching this video can basically pick up the analysis from this particular point without having to redo everything. All right, so let's do a couple more interesting things. And honestly, at this point, we are kind of done with presenting pins. It's quite easy to use pins. As you can see here, actually, we don't want to do this. We want to do it this way. As you can see here, the most important things for pins is to get a data set, discover a data set, and share a data set. And you can do that with pin get and pin. If you had to search pins manually, you would have to use pin find. And what pin find does is it searches for data sets wherever you ask it to search for. So you can, for instance, say, I want to search my GitHub board and see what data sets I've shared there. And as you can see, there's only one. But you could also search for Seattle, which is what we did with the RStudio add-in in the packages board, and that would search all the CRAN packages. So again, it's pretty straightforward, and this kind of like already concludes the functionality of pins. So I think the rest of the in the rest of the video, I'm going to show you how to kind of like analyze the Game of Thrones dataset. And for that, what we can do is, we're going to continue with this Game of Thrones dialogs dataset. All right, so so one of the things that I would like to do would be to analyze kind of like character references in the show. So let's just search for what are the Game of Thrones characters to see if we can do a mashup. And there's there's a list here in Wikipedia. Let's see. Which happens to be on XML. So one of the tricks that you can do, which again, this is unrelated with pins, or at least one of the tricks that I like doing, you can basically, let's see, edit something as HTML, copy this table, and then we can create a new file, paste all these, and we're gonna call it, let's just call it, let's just call this one Game of Thrones.xml. Right, so we have an XML file, and then kind of like what we can do is we can say XML2 read XML, and then this should work. I just do Game of Thrones.xml. Maybe not. Which is my working directory. Yeah, this should be fine, unless maybe I saved it somewhere else, which is fine. Let's see, file, recent. Oh, I save it on pins. Let's see. All right, we can figure this out. So in this case, in this case I save it on pins. So what we have to do. It's get it from the right path. All right, so we have, I'll use this sort of file here, which is also contains XML, basically contains the same XML file, or should contain the same XML file. Let's see. Yeah, this one. So this one contains the characters, and as you can see, it's on XML. So let's just do something. We're gonna use an XML path, which basically is a way of allowing us to find entries in the XML file without having to, like use regular expressions and things like that. So we're gonna get the second element of that table, and then we're gonna say, because it comes with a link, and then we are only interested in the text portion of this particular dataset. Okay, so that looks more like it. So this is our list of characters, and let's just get this as a string, and then let's just create a table out of this, and we're gonna call this name dot. Okay, that looks good. And then what we want to do after that is let's just split the first name and the last name, because otherwise, I mean, it's usually a show, you know, like no one referenced the whole character name by its own, you know, like by the full name. So we can split on first name and last name. And actually, the first name, the last name would have anything but a space. Well, the other way around. No, we want to remove anything before this, the last space. See if that looks better. Yep. And yeah, that looks great. Oh wait, there's this. Yeah. This, we want to remove this particular entry because the problem is, yeah, that's not a real name, and I don't even know who that character is. So we can just remove it. Let's see, which is the last one? Yeah, that looks better. All right, so these are our characters. Let's just name these Game of Thrones characters, right? And we can run these. And again, we can search. This is a pretty cool data set. I mean, it's not as big as the other one, and so maybe it's not that cool. But we spent some time cleaning it, so we can also save this data set, right? So if we want to save this data set, all we need to do is, if we want to share this data set in GitHub, for instance, all we have to do is say Game of characters, and then sorry, Game of Thrones characters, and then let's just rename this with characters, and then we can use pins to just share this data set and push it to GitHub. And as you can see on the connections pane, you can see the different data sets that we have. In this case, you know, we have the dialogs and we have the characters. And if we were to go back to GitHub, you would be able to see here that we no longer only have the dialogs, but we have the characters, which is super useful. All right, so that's again something we can do with pins. We can very easily share our data sets, and now we can do something fun. So we can get the references, kind of like we can look at what are the references to each character on each episode, right? So you know, so we can look at the episodes, and then what we can do is we can do a cross join against the dialogues, right? And then if you look at this, what we would want to do is we would want to count the number of references. Yeah, let's see. Let's use string r. Oh, that's not good. We would use string r, and we can use str count to count the number of references from the dialogues, right? That's the column that has everything. And then, for instance, to look for a specific character, what we can do would be just to say aria, right? So that should, well, actually, let me just remove this one for a second. So that should count how many times aria appears in each of the episodes. Now, this is counting, yeah, this is basically counting absolutely everything, which might not be exactly what we want. We actually want to count by character. So here, these are the dialogues, and these are the references. All right, so actually what we want to do is we want to say references aria, and we want to do a couple smart things. Well, first of all, we just want to keep the episode and the first name of the character, right? And the total references. But this needs to be dynamic, and we actually need to be a bit smarter. We want to, for instance, Jon Snow would have like a bunch of, Jonathan or whatever. Like we want to exclude any, we want to keep only the words. So like a simple thing of doing this would be just to remove, just to match any letters that go before and after. And then we also want to make this dynamic. So to do this dynamic, what we can do is we can just do something like this, and then let's just do the character to lower, and this would be the first name, and that's it. Let's just run. Let's call these GOT references. References, that's correct. Right, let's see if this works. That was too fast. Don't trust this. Okay, let's see. Does it have anything? No. DOT references. All right, what am I missing here? We're selecting the first. Oh, what is this thing? Weird. All right. Sorry. Missing parentheses. References not found. Oh, another typo. References. Give it another shot. All right, so maybe this looks a bit better. Yeah, so actually the references are not looking great yet. But you know, you get the idea. So just to make things a little bit faster, I'm gonna switch to a different I'm just gonna switch to a different notebook which completes basically this particular reference. So here's what we can do is just for the sake of it, we can create the references, which, oh, I think I was missing to move the dialogs to lower. And then what we can do is we can do a ggplot just to figure out which is the most referenced character, or at least, you know, that has more than 50 references. And, you know, you can see here that, for instance, Jon Snow is one of the most referenced characters across the series, which makes sense. And one other thing that we can do is we can pick a specific character, like, for instance, Arya Stark, and figure out, you know, like, what are her appearances across the different episodes. So that's pretty much it. You know, I just keep building the actual queries for the Game of Thrones stuff. What is really relevant for this particular video is, you know, taking a look at pins and how easily it is to actually get those pins and share them, discover them, and then be able to reuse them across different services like GitHub, Kaggle, and RStudio Connect. Right, so this was a very quick intro to pins. I hope it gave you a good idea of how to use pins and what is good for. And again, you can use pins to retrieve datasets, discover, and also share datasets with ease using R and the new pins package.